Jai Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda, Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Gonna move this. Hold on, everybody. The lighting will be better. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschachira Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I just have to get this close enough so I can read and touch the camera. Okay, touch the phone. So we're going to do something which is which I'm excited about, which is a little different from what we normally do. And Sundari Radha asked if we could discuss Krishna Katha, go through different stories of Bhagavatam and then describe the stories and perhaps analyze them as well. Feel them, experience them, relish them, and also analyze them. And I thought before we begin studying the Bhagavatam, going through these stories, it's important to understand what the Bhagavatam is and what its place is in Vaishnava literature. And I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll read from the Bhagavatam itself, because it describes, in the first canto, the second and third verse describes the nature of the Bhagavatam. So I think this is super important for us to understand, because when we become devotees, everything is new, and we don't really understand the position necessarily of the different scriptures. And I think a lot of devotees don't read the Bhagavatam enough, perhaps because they don't understand the value of it. There was a nice story that was told by one devotee who studied Sanskrit. His name is Radhika Raman. Now he's a professor and head of the religious department of Utah State. I think it's called Utah State University. He said when he was studying Sanskrit, there was a professor that visited from India, the United States, and did some teaching there, and he attended some of his classes. And apparently the professor was maybe a Sri Vaishnava. Anyway, he told him, he said, I've read every Sanskrit literature there is, at least religious literature. And he said that when I read Bhagavatam, it's incomparable to anything I've read. And he said that he had a tear in his eye. So the Bhagavatam is special amongst all the Vedas, all the Puranas, Mahabharata, Ramayana. And people who study Sanskrit and study literature understand how special it is. And I think they understand it more than many devotees do, because if we understood it, obviously, we would be reading and relishing it more. So I wanted to describe some things about the significance of the Bhagavatam. And it's interesting, because at the end of the Gita, Krishna says, after he's explained different kinds of dharma, that at the end of the Gita, as you know, Krishna says, Sarva dharma pratyaja mamekam sharanam braja, which means give up all dharma and surrender, which makes it sound like, well, why did you just spend the last hour or so explaining everything, and now you're saying don't do it? It doesn't make sense. Well, he explained everything because Arjuna was in a position where he couldn't hear anything other than do your dharma, do your duty, control your senses, control your mind, act with intelligence, do karma yoga, things like that. That is more for the conditioned soul. But when the soul is a little more purified and they're ready to surrender to Krishna, then Krishna says, okay, everything I told you, that's fine, but actually you don't need to do any of that. All you need to do is just surrender to me. And by surrendering to me, whatever you could achieve by any of those other systems of yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, dhyana yoga, this yoga, that, you will achieve through bhakti. So it's interesting, Krishna is saying, give up all dharma after he spends the greater portion of the teachings of Gita talking about dharma. And the Bhagavatam begins with that we have nothing to do with dharma. So right where Krishna is ending the Gita and say, give up all dharma and surrender, then Bhagavatam is beginning and saying, we're not dealing with dharma here, we're dealing with something else. And what are we dealing with? We're dealing with rasa. And what is rasa? Rasa is the relationship between the devotee and Krishna. So that's all the Bhagavatam is concerned with. It's concerned with rasa, it's concerned with love, it's concerned with feelings of separation. That's what it's say a thesis on love. That's all it's concerned with. And everything in the Bhagavatam is meant to awaken that love in one way or another. And something really interesting, there's a story in Bhagavatam about Vritrasura. And Vritrasura was Chitraketu, he was cursed. And he became externally a demon, and he opposed Indra. And Indra was meant to kill him, and then Indra, he hesitated because he understood that he was actually, Chitraketu had taken this form and that Vritrasura was special. And then Vritrasura said, no, you're supposed to kill me, go ahead and do it. And the way that we understand this story is much different than the way the story is understood in other scriptures. It's described in other scriptures. But in other scriptures, they'll focus on Indra and Indra's victory and so forth. And in Bhagavatam, in the commentaries, it focuses on Vritrasura and the great devotee he was in his relationship with Krishna. And you'll find many stories in Bhagavatam where they focus on the devotee's relationship with Krishna, even more than Krishna, like the pastime of Vamanadev. Vamanadev takes everything away from Bali, but the focus of that story in Bhagavatam is on Bali, not on Vamanadev. It's on Bali's greatness, because everything is focused on the bhakti of the devotee. That's what the Bhagavatam is about. It's all about bhakti and devotion, and so you see it through the devotee. Whereas these stories will be described in other scriptures which are not focused on bhakti, and therefore they'll focus on something else. Like 10 chapters of the Bhagavatam is devoted to the Nrsingadev Leela, and 7 chapters are devoted to Prahlad Maharaj. So the focus is not on Nrsingadev as much as it's on Prahlad Maharaj. And it's only on Hiranyakashipu to ultimately indirectly, anything Hiranyakashipu did indirectly will end up glorifying his son Prahlad. And that's the context of it. So Bhagavatam is always within the context of glorifying love, talking about love. Like you have the pastime of the cowherd boys went begging for some food for Krishna and Balaram, and they went to the homes of Brahmins, and Brahmins wouldn't give anything. They said, we're too busy offering food to the fire, doing our yagyas. And they wouldn't give food to the Supreme Lord when his devotees were begging on his part. But their wives gave. And so that whole story ends up where their wives are glorified, their husbands are glorifying their wives. It's like, we were such a fool. We were doing our yagyas, we were ignoring Krishna and Balaram, and our wives were smart enough to give to Krishna and Balaram. So they're glorifying their wives as better devotees or greater spiritualists than they are. And so, again, bhakti is glorified, love is glorified. That's all the Bhagavatam is doing. Even when it's describing other things, philosophy, the structure of the universe, etc., the devotee sees it in terms of it glorifying Krishna. And everything is about Krishna and everything is about developing Krishna consciousness. So Bhagavatam is the way it's written is different than other scriptures. The Sanskrit it uses is different. There are even words in Bhagavatam, Sanskrit words, that only exist in the Bhagavatam. They don't exist in any other scripture. And the meters it uses are unique. It's not just one meter through the whole scripture. It changes. It is written, it is very difficult Sanskrit. It's not simple Sanskrit. And you could master Sanskrit. You could master simple Sanskrit, like Bhagavad Gita is written in simple Sanskrit. Bhagavatam is much more complicated. And it's, if we knew Sanskrit, we would appreciate it more. The nature of the Sanskrit would be more appreciable. But anyway, I thought we could read those 2 verses of Bhagavatam and discuss them before we discuss any Leela. Because one of the things I would like to accomplish in doing this class is that you relish Bhagavatam. Could you bring my adapter from my room? You'll see it on the floor to the left of the desk. Of course, then I need a place to plug it in. That's a whole other question. Yeah, so I want to read those 2 verses and discuss it, and then I don't know if there'll be time to start discussing pastimes, but if we don't today, we'll do it in the future classes. But I think it's good to get a foundation. And my goal is that to help you understand more about the Bhagavatam and relish it, because as devotees, one of our, what should we say, one of the aspects of a devotee's life is relishing Shastra, and especially relishing Bhagavatam. And so that's what we're supposed to be doing. And if we're doing it, we become enhanced. And so now you have to figure out where to plug it in. No, for the computer. The phones, you can leave that up here just in case. But you should see in my room to the left of the desk on the floor.
The all black one.
It's like that big. So if you're relishing Bhagavatam, then you're relishing your relation with Krishna. If you're relishing your relationship with Krishna, everything's good. And you can obviously keep relishing it and more relish it and more and go deeper and deeper and taste it more. And that's what we should be doing. And so that book, Bhagavatam, it's special because it helps us relish rasa and relish our relationship with Krishna and appreciate it and dive into it. And in fact, the Bhagavatam itself says that you need an adapter. Oh yeah, that adapter right there. The Bhagavatam itself says that the Bhagavatam is Krishna. You'll see Krishna in the Bhagavatam. So, Vainarati has a long time question. Okay, let's see if it's relevant to the class. How do we understand all those descriptions, kings and dynasties in Bhagavatam? Yeah. Well, the Puranas, that's what Puranas do. They're descriptions of kings and dynasties. And those... anything back there? Mm-hmm. Those kings and dynasties... see, everything in Bhagavatam is in relation to Krishna. And if you see it in that way, it will actually enhance your Krishna consciousness. The kings representing Krishna consciousness, Vedic culture. You have to see it in that way. It's all... sometimes we just don't look at it from that perspective, but Bhagavatam's a Purana. Puranas are histories, and the histories, it's one of the main things they do is they describe dynasties. Many of them are great kings, and many of them are great devotees, or most of them are great devotees. And so if you see it from the point of view of devotion, like we're saying Bali Maharaj, his devotion, and the Leelas in relation to Krishna, Prithu Maharaj, Yudhishthira Maharaj, all these, it's all about their relationship. There's so much in Bhagavatam about Yudhishthira Maharaj's relationship with Krishna and how much he loved him, how much control he had, and Krishna was supposed to leave Hastinapur, but he asked him to stay. So because Yudhishthira Maharaj asked him to stay, he wouldn't leave. Even though he had to leave, he was controlled by him. And lessons are also learned that will help purify us. Chitraketu, that was a lesson. He wanted a son, but the son caused him trouble. And there's just, it's like everything you need to know to be a human being and a pure devotee is in Bhagavatam. So from A to Z, it covers everything, philosophically and rasa and historically and culturally. So if you read Bhagavatam from that perspective, thinking, okay, whatever I need to know in terms of behavior, character, philosophy, culture, and rasa, it's there in the Bhagavatam. Then when you read it, you'll see that everything is bringing you closer to Krishna. Even sometimes just by reciting the names of these kings, they're great devotees, great kings, and their names are Krishna conscious, you become purified. The thing is, if we don't deeply understand, we're going to read shloka, first canto, first chapter 2 and 3, if you want to find those shlokas. If we don't deeply understand Bhagavatam, then we start to think that there's so many other books written by non-devotees that are important to read. Not that there aren't practical things we can learn for practical service and so on, but in terms of philosophy, culture, rasa, and so on, then this is the book. This book is special. It's glorified, it's relished, it's everything Mahaprabhu taught was from the Bhagavatam. He taught separation, he taught so many things, he taught rasa, but it's all based on the Bhagavatam. It was all referenced from the Bhagavatam. He was expanding it, exemplifying it in his life. So the idea is that if you see everything in Bhagavatam in relation to Krishna, then it'll help you. I'll give you an example. Like there's a lot of prayers in the Bhagavatam, and sometimes you'll go page after page after page after page after prayer, and it seems very philosophical, and it's kind of like if you've heard one prayer, you've heard them all. They're very similar. They're glorifying Krishna as the supreme, the absolute, the controller of everything, the enjoyer, beyond the modes of nature. So the prayers are sometimes very philosophical and very similar, but there's this, and you might get bored just, okay, I've read, there's 20 shlokas, I read 3, that's enough for me, okay, I had enough. I get the picture, okay. And then I go to the next one, the 3 modes of nature are under your control, and nothing moves without your supervision. In your expansion is Mahavishnu, you glance over, that the prayers are going on, okay, all right. And then, but what you're supposed to see, you're supposed to understand it from the perspective of the devotion and feel that devotion, understand that devotion of the person offering the prayer. And then it takes on a different feel. Like sometimes, I don't know if you remember, but sometimes I suggested that when you read the Bhagavatam, don't only read it, but feel it. Allow yourself to just feel what's going on. And there's feeling to it, not just knowledge to it. So if you're reading the prayers and you're feeling it, you can feel the bhakti of the person offering the prayer. Because that's what the Bhagavatam is about. It's glorifying the bhakti of the devotee. So it's all about love, and we're supposed to pick up on that bhakti because we're supposed to develop bhakti, and these people have bhakti, and we're supposed to get it from them and learn from them. And like you may know the story that prior to 1950, nobody could run a mile in 4 minutes. They thought it was physically impossible. And then that year, somebody did it. And then after he did it, within a year, 50 people did it. They got confidence they could do it. And so when you hear about the greatness of a devotee, gives you inspiration, confidence. I could also strive for that. So I hope that answered your question. And anyway, when you read the Bhagavatam, try to see it that way. You might think these great kings are, anytime you read about a devotee, whatever he does, try to understand his devotion, his greatness. And especially when I read about these great kings, I always look for qualities they have, if they're described, that are lacking in me, that I could hopefully get inspired by hearing about them. So, Narayani Mataji made a recording of the prayers, 96 prayers of the Bhagavatam, who said Srila Prabhupada wanted this done. Oh, okay. Yeah, one time, I was going through the Bhagavatam, all the prayers, thinking I could, like I did Brahma Samhita, I could just take all the prayers in Bhagavatam, put them to music. It would take time, which I didn't have. It would take a lot of time, actually. But it would be nice, because the Bhagavatam it's a lot of prayers. If you go through the table of contents, you'll see the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, the prayers of Hansaguya prayers, the prayers of this, that, and the next thing, prayers of demigods. We know devotees don't read Prabhupada's books, including Bhagavatam. They don't read probably because they don't relish reading. What advice you give, we start relishing. Listen to this class. That's my advice. That's the purpose of this class. Well, as a starting point, if you want to try to understand that there's like something in the Bhagavatam that we're not seeing. It's much deeper than we realize. And that even though maybe we read it, we're not getting it right away, we should understand that it's there. And hopefully by hearing these classes, we'll be able to talk more about the wonderful stories and how they're wonderful and so forth, and start to relish it. But aside from that, set a time every day and read it, and just force yourself, and gradually you'll see what's there. It's at least understand the principle that Bhagavatam is considered the cream. There's no book like it. It's the king. It's the king of books. And just understanding that idea that, okay, this is the king. This is the cream of the Vedas. So I don't understand how that's true, but let me use it. Let me read it. Let me study it. And let me relish it so I can see how it is the cream, how important it is. Like, maybe we can give an example. You might be given something that's very advanced, a piece of technology or software, but you don't understand how evolved or advanced it is because you don't know how to use it that well. And you need someone to explain, no, this is what it does, this is how you use it, and then you start to find out, oh, I didn't know they could do that. And it's doing so many things I didn't realize. Yeah, now I can see this is very evolved. It's a little bit like that. You have to use it and then gradually understand, because you'll see how it affects your consciousness. And as you remember the stories of Bhagavatam, you'll realize that you're getting extremely purified by being absorbed in Bhagavatam. You're becoming more detached, and you realize that that's what it means to be a devotee, to be always relishing hearing and chanting. Like when people want to get married, then, one thing I think is nice to think about is like, well, can you talk to your spouse about transcendental subject matter? Can you sit around and talk and relish these things? Because that's what devotees do. That's the main thing devotees do. Of course, if both husband and wife are in the mode of passion or mode of ignorance, they don't want to talk about these things. But if they're a little more sattvic, they'll naturally want to talk and relish these things. And being with someone who helps you relish hearing Bhagavatam, it creates an amazing bond because that person is helping you go deeper. And anyone who helps you go deeper, you become more attached to. Anyone who helps you come closer to Krishna, you become more attached to. So, and someone's asking, should we read with others? That's nice if you can. And should we read CC first? No, Bhagavatam first. You read Bhagavatam first, you'll understand CC because it's all coming from the Bhagavatam. So when we read Bhagavatam, our focus is to pick up on the devotion of the devotees in Bhagavatam, in the various pastimes, and that's the idea. So read it that way, and then feel it. Sometimes you can read. I don't know how to explain feeling, but it's not like you're trying to analyze or understand with your mind, but you're feeling the bhakti of the devotee, and it gives you a different perspective. And if something touches your heart, it can change you. If something touches your head, it may do nothing other than just give you a perspective, but it doesn't mean that perspective is going to move you to action necessarily. But if it touches your heart, then that's when we start to change. Like I was once reading, I mentioned before, I was once reading the story of Ambarish Maharaj. And I decided to read that story this specific time in the mood of feeling, not in the mood of analyzing. And by nature, I'm very analytical, so I'll analyze things. But I think sometimes when you analyze, you can actually lose the mood and lose the rasa. So then I decided, okay, I'll just feel it. Feel it means, how should I say? I turned my analytical capacities off, so to speak, or lessen their frequency, and just kind of feel what's going on in the story, so to speak, something like that. Just feel it. And when I read it in that perspective, I read it in that way, I got a different perspective, or a new perspective on the glories of Ambarish Maharaj. Because, like if you read it from the point of feeling, then when Durvasa curses or tries to kill Ambarish, you'll feel very upset. What's he doing? Ambarish is innocent, like that. You can feel that. And then when Durvasa comes back and apologizes, please forgive me, and Ambarish says, you didn't do anything wrong, no problem. You feel that. It's like, wow, that's amazing. You feel how amazing it is. And feeling how amazing it is, at least it shifted me to appreciate Ambarish Maharaj on a deeper level. And then, after I felt that, I realized that here's a person who has no enmity and no envy. Because when Durvasa came back after a year, he was still waiting to give him breakfast. And when he finally came back, a year later, he said, no problem, let's have breakfast. And he served him breakfast. And so we know how we would feel if someone tried to kill us. And so I was on this level of trying to feel Ambarish Maharaj and thinking, how could you serve breakfast to someone who tried to kill you? And you're waiting a year to serve them. Ambarish was being chased by the Sudarshan Chakra, and he was going all over trying to escape, going to Narada, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu. And so it took a year and he finally came back. And so that's just my personal experience, that there's a level of Bhagavatam that you can feel yourself into and give you a different experience. So, Bhagavatam asks us to relish it. And so you can relish it in so many ways, and whatever works for you. But there's so many angles that you can see it from, the same story. You could see so many, you can learn so much about etiquette. Like in the West, we have a different kind of etiquette than they have in the East. And even though we read Bhagavatam, many of us don't really pick up on that etiquette. The etiquette in the East is much more refined than etiquette in the West. Etiquette in the West is more like you tell people how you feel. You don't pretend. Listen, I don't like you, I'm going to tell you. We believe that's the best etiquette. Be honest. If something's wrong, just post it on Facebook and let everybody know that someone did something wrong. That's our etiquette. That's not culture. That's not Vaishnava etiquette. That's not the way things work. So if you read Bhagavatam now from a different perspective, from the perspective of culture, you could learn so much about culture and etiquette from the behavior of these kings, of these sadhus, of these devotees. But I think most of us don't learn that because we don't take that particular angle. Today I had a thought, and I was thinking about immigration. And I was thinking, what is the Krishna conscious viewpoint on immigration? Would we just allow people, like it's God's world and you can't prevent anybody from coming in? That seems to be our view on immigration. I mean, Prabhupada said that. You can't claim this is yours, it's God's land. But then someone would make the argument, but we're letting people in who are criminals. So that's not smart. So I was thinking, well, what is the Krishna conscious perspective on that? And then I was thinking of the story in Bhagavatam where Pritha Maharaj chastised Mother Earth because she wasn't producing food, and he was prepared to kill her for not producing food. So I was thinking, okay, we would, Krishna conscious government would allow anyone to come in, but we wouldn't allow anyone to break the law. And if people are breaking the law, they would be punished, and you'd have a strong government. So because the government was so strong, any kind of immigrants that are coming into the country to do anything illegal would not come because they would get caught and they would be imprisoned. Or in Vedic times, perhaps some of the crimes would warrant the death penalty. So yeah, come into our country, it's fine. Just be law-abiding, and if you're not, we'll take care of you in such a way that no one would ever come into our country with an idea to overtake our government or do anything illegal. And so that was the answer I got from that story. So there's a political answer. What are the how do we see Krishna conscious politics? Well, look at the Bhagavatam. It's there. So the culture is there. There's so much philosophy, obviously, that's there. The mood of the Vaishnava is there. The greatness of saints, the whole Varnashram, Davi Varnashram, you can see how it works through the Bhagavatam. So there's so many things you could learn. And if you read it that way, I think that you'll find maybe your angle that will be what you relish reading. You read that into it. And whatever you're reading, you can ask, how does this feed into the particular way I relish Krishna consciousness? There's a lot of things personally I think about that Prabhupada has said, and I've learned through my own realization that they're very important to me. Then a lot of times I will read or I'll listen to Prabhupada and he'll be talking about those very things that I focused on. And it's very relishable for me because I'll hear it and I'll say, yeah, that's those points I was making, those points also, or I was making those points in class, or I was thinking of those points. Here Prabhupada is pointing it out. And so it's like special that these are the realizations I'm having that I got, and then Prabhupada's confirming, yes, these are this is proper understanding, these are the proper realizations. So you may be having realizations and you go to Bhagavatam and they're confirmed. That's relishable also. Reinforcing. Right? So I'm just going to look and see if I missed anything. Is it possible to develop a relation with this Srimad Bhagwatam? Natural attraction to read can be developed Yes. Srimad Bhagwatam is my first book I bought unknowingly because I wanted to give a donation to the temple. Yeah. Generally, what we would recommend is reading it, trying to relish it, and even if you don't relish it, just keep reading it, knowing that it tastes good, but maybe your disease is not cured yet, so you're not tasting it. That's the idea. Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is we don't like reading, or we like reading things which we have particular interest in. But nothing wrong with that. But if those are all non-devotional books, that becomes a problem. Where Bhagavatam is very deep, there's so much there, and there's so much more there. And so the more you read it, the more you'll get out of it, the more you'll see. And so if you're not getting much out of it, that's a sign that you need to be reading it more. And you need to be going more deeply into Krishna consciousness. Because as I said earlier, if you relish it, you'll find how that will transform your Krishna consciousness. And that is one of the 5 main processes of bhakti, is hearing Bhagavatam. So it's like you can't, you can say, well, any of the 5 processes or any of the 9 processes you could become perfect at. But that's true because we have examples of that, but it's not the way our acharyas present, at least Srila Prabhupada presents Krishna consciousness to us. It says, do everything. ISKCON Las Vegas ki jai. Haribol. God, it must be really early in Las Vegas. Wow. Must be like 4 a.m. for her. Wow. Is it 4 a.m. in Las Vegas? Or 5 a.m.? Well, Jackie likes to hear. She's up early. There's certain, for me personally, there's certain stories in Bhagavatam which I just find fascinating because they touch on things that I found important in my life. They reinforce them. They shed light on them. I was going to read one of those stories today. So anyway, I think that's a good introduction for now, at least something that maybe helps us appreciate that all the great acharyas have described Bhagavatam as the supreme, best, most highest of all books, the king. This is the book. And so at least we can understand it theoretically. It's good to know that I have something in my hands that is extremely rare and valuable and extremely special. The way it's written, the subject matter, and what we can get from it. And we can get love of Krishna from it, which makes it quite special. So, this is the 2nd verse of Bhagavatam. Some of you may have heard this verse before. And I want to read the Sanskrit because part of what I want to talk about here requires Sanskrit. Look what I got, everyone. I was just copying. See this? There's 14 seminars on this and 8 CDs, music CDs. Isn't that cool? That is a USB. And it says Mahatma Das Music and Workshops, which I just brought back. I'm now in London, came last night, and they have 100 of these. Isn't that nice? So, this is verse 2. Dharma projitakaita votro paramane matsaranam shatam. This is explaining the purpose of the Bhagavatam. Vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tappatraya mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva parar ishvaraha sadyo ride anavarudyate tra kritivi sushubis tatshanat. I want to go through the word meanings and then discuss them. So it begins with the word dharma, as we were saying, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna ultimately said, have some in India. Oh, you'll have to make them up yourself. You can have them sent to you from China if you want. Yeah, that would be nice, yeah. So, dharma. Prabhupada's translating here dharma as religion, religiosity, religious systems. Projita means rejecting. So what kind of religion does the Bhagavatam reject? Kaitava, covered by fruitive intention. Prabhupada translates it here as completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. Sometimes we'll describe this as cheating religion. Materially motivated, materially motivated is using God for your own material purposes. So, what are you going to get from the Bhagavatam? Well, the Bhagavatam will not give you. It's not going to give you any kind of spiritual activity or knowledge which is going to enable you to improve your material position, as the Vedas do, because the Vedas do that. So Vyasadeva is stating the purpose of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is not going to do that. If that's what you want, you need to go to the Vedas, and you can do something to elevate yourself or improve your karma. Bhagavatam, but dharma kaitava kaitavotra nirmatsuranam satam. So Prabhupada, as I said, sometimes describes this as cheating religion, that a religion which can give you God gives you material benefit, then you're being cheated. Like you come to a store to buy one thing, and it's really what you need, and they convince you to buy something else, which is not as good or not as beneficial. So what's the point? So Bhagavatam's not going to do that. It's not going to cheat you. It's not going to go, here, I could give you God, but I'll give you God's army. Here, I could give you God, but I'll give you money. Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 2. What's the one I'm reading now? I could give you God, but I'm going to give you a process to increase your material life. Then I've just cheated you. So many Vedic literatures do that. Bhagavatam's not going to do that. Dharma projito kaitavotra. Kaitavotra. So what's it going to do? Who's the Bhagavatam for? So then Parama means highest or supreme. Nirmatsaranam means those who are pure in heart, those who are not envious. Satam, devotees. Who's it for? It's not going to give you anything material, so it's for devotees who are finished with the material. They're pure in heart. They're free from material desire. That's who the book's for. If you want something else, then this Bhagavatam's not for you. This is for devotees who don't want anything, or finished with religion. They just want love. If you want love of Krishna, this is your book, because this is what you're going to get from it. Then it goes on. Vedyam vastavam vastu shivanam tapatraya mulanam. It's meant for distinguishing reality from illusion, creating auspiciousness, uprooting the threefold miseries. What's reality? That's Krishna. What's illusion? Maya, the modes of nature. So it's going to show you, here's Krishna, this is the goal. This is what's really good for you. Anything dealing with the modes of nature, it's not going to deal with that. The Vedas deal with that. It's not going to end. Srimad Bhagwatam, this beautiful Bhagavatam, Mahamuni Krite, was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. Kim ba, kim means what? What need is there for any other scripture? Everything everything is in this book. Like sometimes we would hear Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say that if all the books in the world were burned, the only book was Bhagavatam, that would be sufficient. That's all you really need. That's quite a statement, isn't it? All the books in the world burned, that's all we need. Okay, so saying here, so the Bhagavatam is going to give you Krishna. It's not going to give you Maya. It's meant for those devotees who are pure because that's what they want. So why would you need any other book? And then the last line says, Ishvara, Sadhya, Hriddhi. Ishvara, of course, is Krishna. Sadhya, at once, Hriddhi is the heart. By hearing Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord becomes avarudhyate, compact, or just takes over your heart. So, how does Prabhupada translate that? Beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by Vyasadeva is sufficient in itself for God realization. As one attentively and submissively hears the Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord becomes established in his heart. So Prabhupada uses the word compact. It just fills the heart up. At one, you hear Bhagavatam, Krishna's in your heart. You're Krishna conscious when you hear it. It's like you're absorbed. It's like, it's so hard to control the mind. We're giving class tonight about controlling the mind. And if we get an internet connection, we'll broadcast it at 6:30. 6:30 tonight. You have a hotspot on your phone. You can create a hotspot.
At the temple, they have Wi-Fi there.
Oh yeah, so they have Wi-Fi. So we'll broadcast 6:30. But if you hear Bhagavatam regularly and absorb your mind in relishing, then your mind's controlled. Krishna's. This devotee wrote an offering to me, which was so nice. I really liked it. He said, my whole life I put myself in the center. He said, but I could see that it's so useless. And I could see how much better it is if I put you in the center. I thought, wow, that's perfect. Our whole life, we're in the center. How much better we put our guru, we put Krishna in the center rather than ourselves in the center. For lifetimes we've been in the center. It doesn't do us much good. So now you hear Bhagavatam, Krishna becomes the center, he becomes compact. You become Krishna. It was basically saying you become Krishna conscious. By reading the Bhagavatam, because it's Krishna, the Bhagavatam is Krishna. It states in the Bhagavatam that the Bhagavatam is Krishna. It's not different from Krishna. You can see Krishna in the Bhagavatam. He's there, he appears. So what a fantastic way to be absorbed in Krishna. And you will experience it, even if you have to tie yourself up in a chair, ask your husband or wife, say, tie me to this chair and keep me awake for an hour. I'm going to read the Bhagavatam. Or just read Bhagavatam to me and sprinkle water on me if I fall asleep. Tie me to this chair. I'm going to hear. Just force the medicine down my ears. I got to hear this. You hear it every day. It's going to work on you. It's going to be amazing. I mean, don't make Krishna consciousness difficult for yourself by not relishing, hearing sufficiently. So Krishna Karshani has a question. She says, Europe is now facing the problem of refugees who are mostly Muslims and are causing serious problems. I don't want to go into details, but Poland refused to accept Muslim refugees. There's a lot of countries that refused them. You know that? You're not the only. It's very interesting. I was thinking about this. This is really interesting. I read an article. Many, many countries are refusing for various reasons. I don't think it's only terrorism, but they may have other concerns. Obviously, if people come from a poor country to a wealthy country who don't have a good means of livelihood, it can force people into committing crime, even the ones that didn't intend to. So I think it's a concern not only for Islam, but for people coming to wealthy countries from poorer countries who are not necessarily employable, or who can't be employed in well-paying jobs. And we are accused of having no compassion for people in need. We should be compassionate for others, but also have the right not to let come to our country those who might harm us. We had an argument with some devotees who said that even if we suspect that someone may harm us in the future, still we should help this person. The question is, where are the limits of compassion? I think the answer I gave is the same answer I would give now. I'm thinking that's how Prabhupada would answer. Because Prabhupada, he said Kshatriyas were very strict. And so if someone did something illegal, they would be punished. And punishments were, the government was so efficient that the few, if any, would escape, few or any who committed illegal actions would escape punishment, capture and punishment. And so because of that, it deterred criminals, because the likelihood of them getting caught was close to 100%. So why would criminals want to go into a country where they have a 100% chance of getting caught? They wouldn't. They would try to find a country where they wouldn't get caught. Now you might say, well, what's the chance of 100% of the criminals getting caught? And with today's system and the qualifications of people, that's a problem. I was only reflecting on it philosophically. That would be the general route we would take, because we don't want to discriminate against honest people, because dishonest people create problems. And Prabhupada said, it's God's country. But I think there is validity if we know that a certain ethnic group has a high number of people who are criminal, and we have a bad system for controlling criminality. There may be some restrictions. The Democrats, the politically correct people, don't like that. But, obviously a strong government is necessary to control. So democracy is open. It's vulnerable because it's open. Prabhupada said, people should be allowed to go wherever they want. It's not your land, it's God's land. So I've never heard any discussion where he addressed this point. So it's a little difficult to represent him on this, because the only indication he got was let them come in. And so my backup to answer your question was just have a very strong government, so that if we suspect a certain ethnic group is more inclined towards criminality, then work things out in a way where you're able to watch them or have more control of what they're doing. And I don't know. It's a big question. But the one thing we can say is that Prabhupada did emphasize strong governments, and that people break the law, they should be punished. So Prabhupada was strong about that. I think he was stronger about punishing people who break the law than discriminating who can come in. Now, if a majority of people from a certain country are breaking the law, that may be another concern. But I don't think that's true necessarily. But what I was thinking also as another point to this discussion was that there's so many countries that are turning against Islam. They just don't like it because the Islam agenda is to come in and take over the country. So that being the case, if in some countries that's their agenda, or some people say that's their agenda, if it is the agenda of some of them, I can't say it is, but if that's true for some of them, I think it is. At least we've been told that by themselves. We've seen that that's one of the tenets of Islam, and I can't say every person who's Muslim feels that way, but some do, or say for the sake of discussion, if some do, then I think the government would be right in dealing with that, preventing them if they're suspected of, and I think all governments do that. And because the government has to maintain stability, and if people come in if immigrants come in to destabilize a country, obviously. You don't want them. These questions are interesting because they ask us to think, what would we do if we were in charge of a country? And they're not easy questions to ask. I didn't hit the see more part. Yeah. The government's duty is to protect the citizens. So like you say, if there was strong evidence that people were dangerous, then the government would have a right to deal with those people as needed. So, both sides. I think the question is maybe easier to answer if you live in a country that has allowed a lot of immigrants to come in and it's creating a problem. It's just, it's a difficult question because there are a lot of innocent people that come in and nice people that come in who are also Muslim. So do we punish one because of the mistakes of a few? These are the questions. But there's another thing I wanted to address related to this, is that yesterday I read, I think there were 6 countries that were refusing Muslims to immigrate, or maybe even asking or getting Muslims, some of the recent immigrants, to leave. But definitely they were against Muslim immigration. And I thought that there are devotees, there's an element in our movement which is very, very conservative, more conservative than Prabhupada was. And you see the reaction to the world of ultra-conservatism, religious conservatism. People don't like it. So it's something to consider, that if we're going to spread Krishna consciousness in a way that people can be open and accept it, if we're overly traditional, conservative, the world won't relate to us and they'll start pushing us away. So it was just a thought I had, because I know many devotees are very concerned that we're becoming too watered down or liberal. But many devotees have also given the opinion that being too conservative is a bigger problem, because it narrows down the number of people that would relate to Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that's another thought. But we have a few more minutes. Let me read this last verse, the next verse, which is about relishing the Bhagavatam, and this verse will then finish the introduction for establishing the foundation for the Bhagavatam, so that when we start reading it, we'll be in the right mood. This is the third verse, first canto, first chapter, third verse, and this is indirectly stating the purpose of the Bhagavatam. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam shukamukaram mitadravya samyutam pivat bhagavatam rasa alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi vabhaka. This is really amazing. Nigama means the Vedic literature, and Kalpataru means the desire tree. So, from the desire tree of Vedic literature, Bhagavatam is Galitam, fully matured. Phalam, fruit. The fully matured fruit of the Vedic tree. And Sukadeva Goswami, it came from his mouth, the lips of Sukadeva Goswami, the Bhagavatam, the nectar came from his lips of the Bhagavatam. And the fruit is semi-solid and soft and therefore easily swallowable. So you have this tree, Vedic literature, this is the ripened fruit, and this fruit has become even sweeter, touched by Sukadeva Goswami. The fruit's coming from his mouth. And here it said, what's the Sanskrit, dravya samyutam? Dravya is semi-solid and soft, easily swallowable, and samyutam, perfect. Oh yeah. So pibata, relish the Bhagavatam. It's nectar, relish it. Rasam, the juice. Even in a liberated state, after liberated state, always relish it. And this Bhagavatam will be appreciated by thoughtful men, what does it say? Those who are full in knowledge of mellows. Expert and thoughtful men in knowledge of mellows. Those who want rasa, they'll appreciate it. Now, there's a commentary. Who wrote the commentary? Maybe Jiva Goswami. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this. Sridhar Swami. He said that fruit of the Bhagavatam, it has no peel, it has no seed, it has no pulp, it's just juice. So there's nothing to digest. It's just pure rasa. Isn't that interesting? The fruit of Bhagavatam, what is it? It's just juice, it's rasa. It's just, as I was saying, it's just about Krishna's devotees and their love. Isn't that interesting? So, listen to the purport, because it I think summarizes what we've been discussing. In the two previous shlokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagwatam is the sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic scriptures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this shloka, it is stated, Srimad Bhagwatam is not only a superior literature, but it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Bhagavatam. The Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all things knowable by man. They deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. The Vedas contain regulative principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter. And all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all this are specific directions for spiritual realization. Regulated knowledge involves a gradual rising of the living entity to the spiritual platform, and the highest spiritual realization is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the reservoir of all spiritual taste or rasa. Then Prabhupada lists the rasas and says the sum total of all these rasas is love. And he's just describing rasa. So again, it's just emphasizing that's the point of the Bhagavatam. I'll just go down a little bit and read one or two more things. In this shloka, it is definitely stated that spiritual rasa, which is relished even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literature of the Bhagavatam due to its being a ripened fruit. And as we can experience rasa by reading it, by submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of his heart's desire. So you can enter rasa by hearing the Bhagavatam and relishing it. And you see that when we go on parikrama in Vrindavan, Mayapur, and we're telling stories from Shastra, everyone is just completely ecstatic. Doesn't matter if you're a new devotee, old devotee, young, whatever, big, small, nobody in ISKCON, the biggest in ISKCON, everyone is just, it's the same nectar for everybody. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, the fruit got sweeter when Sukadev touched it, because when birds eat fruit, they get sweeter. This is a long purport. Let me read the last paragraph. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of the rasa should receive the message of Bhagavatam in the chain of the cyclic succession from Srila Sukadev Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its very beginning. And not whimsically to satisfy the mundane who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Srimad Bhagwatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Sukadeva Goswami or his bona fide representative. So, somehow or other, get the juice in your ears, just like the juice of Bhagavatam, get it in. And let your world change. Just like Krishna is like, he's actually real. In case you didn't know, in case you had doubts, he actually exists. He's real. Bhagavatam is real. This is, in case you didn't realize it, Bhagavatam, it's it. It's not Shakespeare. It's not this or that. It's not, what's an author? James Joyce. Was that a man? A woman who took that name? James Joyce? You know that? What's that other? Yeah. There's so many great authors, great writers, But, yeah, this is it. You have the Bhagavatam, so dust it off, ladies and gentlemen. Open it up. Pour the nectar in your ear and see what happens. Just do it every day and, who knows? You might actually become completely Krishna conscious. Believe it or not, it's there within you. Nirmal wants me to answer his question. I have to go back and find it. I missed it. In reading the Bhagavatam, I cannot help realize there is so much in just one shloka. I do not understand. If that is the situation, the way a person's mind works, as is my case, should... Oops. It's hard to get... Should one understand that as purifying anyhow? Yes. Should one surrender that their minds cannot fully comprehend? Yeah. Well, one should think that if I'm not understanding, it's a lack of my purity, because it's not intellectual. Obviously more knowledge will be better, but it's not entirely intellectual. So part of the reason we don't understand is we're just not purified enough. And so, you can bang your head against the wall, you can read it again, you can pray, you can jump up and down, but there's only so much you can do to understand unless you become purified. So yes, we do pray, and yes, we do read it again. And just go on in your devotional service and try to become more purified, and then you will understand more. It's just there's never going to be a limit of how much you understand. You'll always understand more. There'll always be more to understand. So, I've said many times that when we ask Prabhupada, what should we do if we don't understand something? He said, just read it again. All right, you read it again, you still don't understand. Okay, go to the next verse. But, and then maybe, 85 shlokas later, you think, oh, now I know what shloka 3 meant. Now I understand it. I didn't understand it before. Sometimes it's like that. And, there's so many things that I think, okay, now I understand. And 10 years later, I think, I didn't understand. I thought I did. Well, I did understand, but I didn't understand much. What I understood was that I understood more than I understood before, but that doesn't mean I've completely understood. It's like if you read the commentaries of Acharyas, you think you understand something, and they just take it to a whole new level. So that's the relishable aspect of the Bhagavatam, is that you think you understand it, but you can go deeper, and you'll never get to a point where you can't go deeper, and you'll hear the same story again, and you'll go deeper, and you'll see things you didn't see because you're in a different place. So yeah, just try it, see what happens. Okay, we're going to say goodbye to all of you, and if You want to hear class tonight, 6:30 ISKCON time doesn't necessarily mean it'll start at 6:30, although I think in the UK people are usually on time. Yes? No? Oh, they are. In China they actually come early. Yeah, we'd have programs start at like 9, whatever they started, and like I'd come 10, 15 minutes early and everybody was there doing kirtan. That's nice. I was the latest one to my own programs. Yeah, so 6:30 means we have to set everything up. So if you want to attend that, that's 6:30 Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, which is 5 hours later than EST, than New York. Is it 5 hours later than, I think it's 5 hours later than New York. Anyway, it's GMT, 6:30 GMT. According to me, New York's 5 hours earlier. True? 5 hours earlier.
Yeah, so
that'd be 1:30. For those of you bad in math, it would be 1:30 in the afternoon in New York. And it would be 3 hours earlier, which means 10:30 in Los Angeles. And it would be 12:30 in Texas. And it would be 2:30 in Amsterdam, right? Yeah. And in India, it might be pretty late.
Yeah, 4.5, 5 hours.
Yeah. Might be too late in India. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.